In a 10 into the pit. This is crazy, okay? I will admit, and it is 100% not what's going to happen, but FNAF has already established time travel as possible in the very first Fazbear Frights book, Into the Pit. Remember where Oswald jumps into a ball pit and somehow leaves his year, which I predicted was 2011 in a previous video, and then appears in 1985 to witness 5 children getting killed? Yeah, that story wasn't written for no reason, I think. And where do we see the first ball pit that isn't in a simulated pizzeria meant to just attract animatronics and not really kids? The Mega Pizzaplex. I'm just saying, alright, the time travel is already established and technically canon in the FNAF multiverse. And considering how sketchy Gregory is, I wouldn't put it past him from being from the future. There are 2 moments that in my head really solidify this as a possibility, albeit a wild possibility, but a possibility nonetheless. I mean, like the therapist disc where the therapist calls client 46 out about the lies about their home life, and then the fact that when Gregory leaves the Pizzaplex in the worst ending, he sleeps in a cardboard box. Okay, the therapist in one of the tapes says that 46, which I'm still at this point at least kind of thinking is Gregory, had a great home life, but they told their previous therapist that they had a horrible one. But if that is the case and they have a great home life, how is that the case if he's sleeping in a cardboard box? Maybe because it hasn't happened yet. The tragedy where he most likely loses his parents hasn't happened when the game takes place. It happens in the future, which could mean that this girl that we play as could be Gregory's sister who came to save him when he didn't actually come back to their time. It's nuts, but it's possible. Anything is possible with FNAF at this point. In at 9, friends. Now a theory about our little blonde girl in the middle of the poster, alright? Who is she? I made it a point last time to mention how she looked an awful lot like the silhouette of the 9 children who have gone missing due to Vanny, and I still stand by that. So, in my mind, the most realistic answer is that the missing children aren't actually dead. Or at least this time they aren't. That they were instead trapped inside the building somewhere, much like how Vanny in the first trailer says that Gregory, your friends are here with me, or something like that.
Gregory, your friends are worried about you. They're here with me. Please come out.
So clearly, Gregory, at least originally, knew these missing children, which explains why he came to the Pizzaplex in the first place, but it doesn't explain how he never mentions them. Either way, it's a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just a missing child who is also one of Gregory's friends, that thanks to the collapse managed to escape whatever prison she was stuck in. And it ain't save him. Now there is a very clear connection between the Ruins poster and the Save Them minigame from FNAF 2. The text on that one screen, at least to me, indicates that we might have to save Gregory from whatever situation he's in with Freddy. Since we know that eventually he does make his way onto the hill that he sits in after the true ending and the Princess Quest ending. However, it could be possible that that scene we see just happens before and then he comes back, although I wouldn't see why he would come back. It's also possible that that's just a dream, since it's more realistic than the other endings. But, I mean, it could just be because the true ending is canon and that's why it's realistic, but you know what? Nothing is clear with FNAF. Obviously, if it's real, we will end up being successful for saving Gregory, but it is possible that we will die in the process. And you know what? Here's hoping. I don't want more children to keep track of. And it's 7 1 year later. With the DLC not releasing until 2023, the question remains of when in the timeline the DLC will take place. Yes, it will take place after the true ending for Security Breach, obviously, but how long after is the actual question. See, with the state of the animatronics, it seems like it could be later on, and like with the release date being 2 years after the release of the original game, it means that it could be linear in a timeline sense. So maybe it would also take place 2-ish years after the ending, or maybe just 1 year, depending on how you look at it. I don't know. But then that would also bring on the question of why Gregory is trapped if it's a year or 2 later. And then we also have to ask, you know, who is this girl and why is she coming to this abandoned pizza place 2 years later when she is again the size of a 6-year-old and alone? You know, she's not like an urban explorer teen with her friends, so yeah. And while there are theories about it, this one specifically about it being like a year later is from Amanda specifically, but I don't know. We don't know and we won't know until it's released. But hopefully it is right, because I would love to see how Gregory survived. for a year. And at 6, Help Me. Very reminiscent of the Same Them minigame from the earlier FNAF games, and I think it was FNAF 2. You can see Gregory's face on the bottom left monitor with the phrase "Help Me" underscore written in big green lettering. This to me seems to indicate that we may have a potential plot idea brewing where we need to save Gregory and Freddy after the collapse of the Pizzaplex. Because I mean, like, we know that Gregory and Freddy are sitting on the hill in the final shot of the true game, and they're also sitting on the hill alone, meaning that if we do end up saving him, our player character is probably going to die in the process. This also means that we won't be playing this game as Gregory, obviously. I mean, I've already talked about it before. But the underscore here could also be like another indication of Gregory being a robot, if you want to look at it like that, which is kind of insane. And it's a bit of a stretch, but I mean, oh well. But it could also just be a reference to a file within the game files, or a file within the DLC files that could contain additional information. But I have no idea if that's true, or if it's just speculation. But given the fact that people think that there's an ARG, maybe a file that is help me underscore, since underscores are primarily used for putting spaces in file names without actually having to use spaces. I don't know, maybe that's something that we should look into when it's released. Maybe it'll have a little bit more info for us. Halfway through into number 5, Vanny's Fate. Vanny's Fate from the best ending is also a mystery when you look at it, okay? Because in the canon ending, you know, the one where we fight against William Afton in the form of Burn Trap and then the whole Pizzaplex collapses, in that ending, we don't see what happens to Vanny, okay? While yes, Burn Trap might have been dealt with, we don't know if that releases Vanny or if she's still under his control. Plus, we don't know what she was doing and where she was when all of this goes down. Like, when there's a canon ending, you expect the main antagonist of the game to be there, right? So when Gregory and Freddy are just chilling on that hill, what comes next? Okay, I think a question that I genuinely don't have the answer to is this one, and I don't think that I could have an answer. There are so many possibilities at this point that it's impossible for me to guess, and I think that that's kind of the point, so that we have no idea what's coming with this DLC. But like, I don't know, what do you think? Did Vanny survive, or was she caught in the collapse? I mean, we see her eyes in the poster, but that doesn't exactly mean that it's her, because again, the rooftop ending has like 2 of them, so I don't know. Was it just the raceway, or was it the rest of it? I don't know, okay? Let me know your thought process in the comments. Okay, I'm genuinely curious. In at 4, The Blob. The Blob is an amalgamation of various animatronics that appeared in Security Breach as a secret antagonist. And as its name suggests, the Blob is a massive blob. It's a huge mass of wire and like kind of like tentacles and animatronic parts. I don't know. It has a whole load of glowing red eyes. It's basically the Ennard or Molten Freddy of this new game, or at least of this new chapter in the FNAF story. However, this seems like the right kind of monster. It seems like a kind of thing that you would find in the backrooms, honestly, okay? The Blob's mind is one of a mindless monster reacting with simple grunts and screeches that are both distorted and deep and kind of mechanical sounding in a way. Some theorize that it's supposed to be all the animatronics making up one form this time instead of just being separate entities combined into like one being like they were with Ennard. But like, God, dude, we have no idea. It has plastic faces that are on it that should 100% have not been in there, okay? Like, where the hell did Chica come from? I don't remember Chica being in FNAF 6 before it burnt down. So, I don't know, okay? It's suspicious as hell. It grabs William. We don't know if it's dead. I don't know, okay? I have trust issues, and this thing involves Baby, which only made them worse. So, yeah, I'm questioning it. I don't trust it. Nope. No. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Burn Trap. Now that Afton is out of his charging port like some weird new Apple product, assuming that this is where the story is supposed to go, what could the possible DLC story with him be, okay? I mean, like, I'm guessing Burn Trap is somehow able to get back into the Pizzaplex, despite Freddy telling Gregory that the elevator would only be good for 1 trip, but who knows, okay? Maybe that's because, like, Gregory and Freddy's weight combined, or something like that. I don't know, maybe with just Afton on it, it would actually be able to make more than 1 trip, because, like, I don't know, he's an evil dickbag, right? I mean, he comes back no matter what the general population wants and what is probably best for the story. They don't care. They're gonna bring him back. So yeah, Afton would probably get back up and start roaming the Pizzaplex again, probably corrupting anything that he could, which would probably lead to yet another ending where we would have to defeat him and or maybe have the rest of the building come down so that we can deal with all of them at once. I would love that. That would be wonderful. But in my eyes, I feel like we would have to lure him down to like parts and service and then tear him apart and then reveal his bloody insides that are still somehow there. And then, I don't know, okay? Look. Burn Trap being in this is going to be so confusing, and this DLC itself is going to be so confusing that I have no idea what the possible implications could be. So I want to know. Tell me directly. I won't share it, okay? Scott, just message me. All right, please. Let's sort this out so that I can be put to rest, and then like the soul that you're seeing on your screen, because I've been dead for 5 years because of this damn series, can finally move on into the definite party that's happening downstairs, because we both know I ain't going up. And with like, let me move on, please. Let my spirit be at rest, because this is I won't share it with anyone. You'll just tell me and then boom, right downstairs. But ultimately, in number 2, possession rules. Possession in the FNAF universe is very interesting. However, it's not something that we actually fully understand at all, really. There are a couple things that we do know, like how agony is supposed to be one of the most powerful emotions that stretches out further from the body than anything else, but we also don't really know if agony grabbing hold of something is what we call possession, or if they're two different things. We don't know if like you have to die, and if when you do, if your like remaining agony is supposed to be your spirit. We don't really know any other rules, if there are any, okay? We think you need to be close to the thing that you're possessing, assuming that possession and agony aren't different things, or are different, because like, you know, if it is agony, then you would need to be around the thing because it needs to reach out and grab onto it, and I'm sure it doesn't have more mileage than my grandma after shuffleboard. But like, I don't know, we know nothing about possession, and I would like the DLC to explain it, or for someone else to explain it to me. Okay, Scott, Steel Wool, Matt, Pat, someone hit me up. Notice me, senpai. Please, I'm saying it again, Sky Daddy Scott. Please. I'm going to be more cringe until you say hi. And finally, in at number 1, Afton's fate. We don't know what happened to Afton, okay? Like, the Security Breach ending is one of the most confusing but scary parts of Security Breach because it contains a whole load of things that don't make sense. One of them is just the ending itself, okay? It's so vague. After making your way into Burn Trap's area, he tries to take over Freddy, you fight him off, you stop him, and then you think that it's gonna be over. The whole place is on fire because, you know, you were lighting him on fire, because that was a great idea, Gregory. Burn Trap is burned, he's limping, and then the blob comes out of nowhere, grabs him, and then seems to get rid of him, even though he was trying to kill us not like 5 minutes earlier, okay? Then Freddy and Gregory are just chilling on a hill, but also they shouldn't have been able to get there because Freddy still has to recharge. I don't know, okay? It's a lot. There's supposed to be death animations in the game files, but I don't know. I don't believe you. And he's not dead. Alright, so please, just tell me. In at 10, release date. As I've said before, the DLC isn't releasing until sometime in 2023, which is this year. So, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that we don't exactly know, but that could also be a good thing because it kind of gives us an unknown amount of time to pump out more DLC content until we actually have to pay attention to it. But also, if they don't give us a release date, they won't feel like they need to adhere to it, so we might actually get something complete when they release it. And it could also mean that this DLC is bigger and better than the previous DLC, like, you know, the one for Help Wanted. Like, you could add a couple of new Nightmare animatronics, or I guess crushed animatronics, or even a couple of more levels. But it also just raises the question, like, what exactly are they doing, and how are they taking their sweet time? Because again, we've seen nothing else about it. I don't know. It's free, so we can't really expect to see something huge for free, but I mean, I don't know. It's affiliated with Scott, so who knows? I don't know. Steel Wool might be like, yeah, let's release it for free. But Scott might be like, yeah, no, release it for free. And then Steel Wool's like, I don't know. I don't know Steel Wool. I don't know Scott, but I would like to. Hit me up. In at 9, anything. Literally anything would be great information to have. But we honestly, at least at the time of filming this, know nothing about the DLC aside from what was originally revealed. Like, the poster is all we've got since it came out, and it makes me genuinely upset. okay? Like, we didn't even get an April Fool's Day joke reveal. Okay, all we have is this poster that was like just as unfinished as the original game. I mean, if you look at the trees in the background, one of the sections isn't actually complete. The floor at the bottom also cuts off, but the rocks that are on top of the floor don't cut off. Mostly because at this point the ground without brightening has faded into black, but the rock is still kind of visible. However, even unbrightened, you can see a clear divide between the tile and just pure black. And you can also see that the left floor does the same thing. And it's also very clear in the original poster. I mean, like, come on, okay? It's even like a glowing rock that's sitting at the border. It kind of reminds me of like when an item is important in a game, so it's like highlighted, even if it's unrealistic in the setting. But also, the most interesting part in my eyes, like I said, is the far left tree, the one that's in the back next to the escalator. The bottom two sections of that tree are just blank. Like, it's a black outline with a solid brown color filled into it, like the artist was like blocking in the colors and then forgot to finish the detail, despite doing the rest of that same tree. I don't know what happened there, but And it ain't plot. Now, time that we get to some theories about our little blondie in the middle. Who is she? I've made it a point recently, or previously at least, to mention that she looks an awful lot like the middle silhouette of the 9 children who went missing due to Vanny. We can see it in the newspaper in the bad ending. And I still stand by that point, okay? She does look like that person. So, the most realistic answer that I have is probably that she's just one of the missing children who aren't actually dead, and that they're instead just trapped in the building somewhere, because Vanny doesn't really have, like, she doesn't seem like she wants to kill us. I mean, we assume she wants to kill us, but there's not really much about that. Especially when in the first trailer, Vanny says the same thing.
Gregory, your friends are worried about you. They're here with me.
So clearly, Gregory must have known these children, or at least kind of known them, which explains why he would come back to the Pizzaplex in the first place, but it doesn't explain how he never mentioned them. Either way, it's still a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just one of the missing children that managed to escape thanks to the collapse of the actual Pizzaplex. But I mean, again, I would like to actually know. I would like to have some real information. In its 7th main character, when it comes to the blondie on the poster again, while the girl could be one of the escaped children, she could also be Client 46, but it's also possible that she's Elizabeth Afton, either as a ghost, maybe if she was 46 that wouldn't make sense, but like maybe she could be Elizabeth Ghost, or she could be like just a normal spirit, or someone else. I mean, I don't know. Okay, if we take a look at the blob, which should include Circus Baby, her eyes aren't lit any longer, you know, because like there's the masks that are lit. Baby's eyes aren't lit, which means that that spirit is probably no longer in the animatronic. And considering how Afton's body still somehow survived this fire as well as the last one, and we think that Michael might have managed to make his way into Glamrock Freddy, it would make sense that Elizabeth's spirit had survived as well, especially if she wanted to stick around and keep trying to impress her dad. Since in previous videos we have come to the conclusion that Remnant can only be burned away if the spirit wants to be set free, or instead the burning just doesn't do anything and it was all lies that William concocted, and they only actually get released if their unfinished business is solved, like with the original missing children in the Happiest Day minigame. But again, we can't be sure because they haven't given us anything for what I feel like has been a year. I'm pretty sure it's been a year. I think it's been over a year actually. It might have even been 2. It's been a while. I've been talking about FNAF for a long time. And at 6, Glamrock Bonnie. And while we may not be choosing our guardian, it's definitely possible that in this whole mess, Bonnie was released from whatever prison he was being held in as well. Or maybe he was being held in if he wasn't actually destroyed by Monty. I don't know, it's something that could be possible. There are plenty of doors that we can only get behind if we have level 10 security clearance, which is actually impossible in the game. Even if you get every single pass code barcode thing that you can get, you can only get up to level 8. So those doors could have been opened or maybe even destroyed after the Pizzaplex's collapse, which could explain how we get into these new sections and how we actually expand the map after we get the DLC. I mean, like, we're probably not gonna have to be going around getting all the security badges anyway, since, you know, we already have 8 of them, and even if there were any remaining, it wouldn't really make sense, but a security door that's level 10 would make much more sense if it's just destroyed, okay? Because, like, what would they have kept behind those doors? Maybe they kept Bonnie in some stasis chamber like they were doing with Afton, because maybe they knew that Bonnie wouldn't be able to be controlled, and that's why they replaced him with Monty. I don't know. something like that. Halfway through into number 5, antagonist. We've played as the antagonist before, however the player we were was only an antagonist in the next game, not in the game that we were playing, meaning that this time we could be playing as an actual antagonist. I mean, Chica being in the poster either means that there is a connection or we're just being messed with, and recently I think we're always being messed with, so I'm gonna go with that, meaning that this little girl could possibly be Vanny. I mean, we know that Vanny does have a spirit within the building as we see in the rooftop ending, but could we actually be playing as her child spirit? I mean, it's possible. It wouldn't be the wildest thing that FNAF has ever done. Additionally, I mean, we could be the spirit found in Princess Quest because, like, come on, would that really be out of the question? At this point, I'm pretty sure Princess Quest is destroyed, so maybe it released something. It's not out of the question. It's unlikely, but it's not impossible. Okay, there's a difference there. It would explain why she's in black and white unless there's, like, light on her. So, in at 4, Chica's Revenge. Chica being on the poster though is not necessarily just for a distraction. It could be that it is meant to indicate that Chica is the reason all of this is happening. And honestly, after Niagara Falls Comic Con, I wouldn't put it past Chica. That's right, I'm still mad about it. I mean, after all this, it could be some form of twisted revenge for Gregory dismantling her in an attempt to escape originally. So could this girl be a manifestation of Susie as an attempt to gain our trust and inevitably kill us? Or at least try to, at the very least, because, like, I mean, to be fair, if we think about it, we aren't going to kill Gregory or get Gregory killed, since after all he does still need to make it up to the hill at the end of the Afton ending. So unless that happens and then he comes back, which seems unlikely given the help me text on the monitor and the fact that he just swore he would never do that, I feel like this is kind of possible. So could this all just be a manifestation trying to gain our trust? Probably not, but the more Chica, the happier I am. Usually. Getting close to the end at number 3, Prisoner. Now, time to get into some theories about our little blondie in the middle, alright? Who is she? I don't know. I doubt that it's Susie, like I've mentioned earlier. But I've mentioned in previous videos how she looks an awful lot like the middle silhouette of the 9 children who have gone missing due to Vanny on the newspaper, and I still stand by that point, okay? I think they look similar. So the most realistic answer that I have is that it's one of the missing children who aren't actually dead and that they were instead trapped in the building somewhere, much like how Vanny in the first trailer for the game says that she has Gregory's friends here with her. So clearly Gregory must have known the kids that have gone missing, which actually would explain why he came to the pizza place in the first place. It doesn't really explain how he never mentions them throughout the whole game, but who knows, okay? Either way, it's a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just a missing kid who, thanks to the collapse, managed to escape containment like an SCP gone wild. But ultimately, in at number 2, No More Freddy. It is also possible that Freddy is destroyed, or that he just won't be in this DLC at all thanks to the statue we see on the poster. This poster could be an indication of what happened to Freddy after the pizza plexus collapse. I mean, like, it did destroy Chica pretty well, right? So, like, wouldn't it have destroyed Freddy too? Like, yes, he ends up on the hill with Gregory, but, like, I mean, it could be a dream, right? Or maybe it's like a heaven. Maybe they're both dead. That scene could be several years after the actual ending to the game. We could have just seen the end of the FNAF series with that shot, okay? We can't be certain. Or at the very least, the game could be just omitting Freddy and he won't make an appearance because they couldn't get the voice actor or something for whatever reason, hence why his statue is destroyed, okay? The thing is in pieces. Have you seen the poster? But why is it? We don't know. There isn't much rubble around it. The escalator walls are less damaged than this statue, so I don't know why the statue would be so destroyed if nothing around it actually seems broken, but you know, I don't know. And finally, in at number 1, Elizabeth Afton. I've mentioned before how both these kids, Gregory and this girl, look like Afton kids. Gregory is very clearly meant to be at least an allegory for Crying Child, okay? Stripes on the shirt, the age, the relationship with Freddy, it's right there in our faces, okay? Whether you believe he's a robot or not doesn't matter. He's at least meant to represent Crying Child. And now, look at this girl. While she may be in mostly black and white, she is very clearly blonde, okay? She has pigtails like Baby does, and we all know who Elizabeth was possessing. Yeah, Baby. She's also wearing a skirt exactly like Elizabeth was wearing at the time she ended up getting caught in Sister Location. And I mean, like, if Crying Child's 2 stripes are enough for a comparison, then I think that this is more than enough. The outfit is basically the same. And then, look at her shoes. The lights are the only thing that has color on them on this character, which is very clearly meant to draw our attention to it, and then those lights are purple and red. Purple representing Afton, obviously, and red could be Vanny. Maybe it's supposed to be Vanny's eyes, but Baby is absolutely covered in red, okay, from her clothes to her hair. Red is all over that animatronic. Plus, if this girl's in black and white, maybe she's just a ghost. Maybe she's not actually real. Maybe it's just Elizabeth's spirit coming after her brother. In a 10 FNAF ARG. This was brought up in an older, or kind of like a recent but not the most recent MatPat FNAF theory, and people were starting to suggest that actually like an ARG would be involved in the DLC. The basic idea being that the FNAF Fazbear Frights books were originally going to have an ARG that Scott ended up cutting out for whatever reason, and then released as part of the Felix the Shark book as the extra couple stories. But I'm here to tell you that that's probably not real. All right, Scott has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't want to cross the line between fact and fiction, and that he wanted to keep these two worlds separate. Probably because, FNAF relates so closely to Chuck E. Cheese. And that's also why he would have never made a real location. Or at least he didn't until the announcement, or I guess the discovery of the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Delivery Service, the digital restaurant delivery service in the works since at least January of 2021. So, yeah, maybe it's more accurate than we thought. In a 9 Into the Pit. This is crazy, I will admit, okay? It's most definitely not the case, but I just want it to be real, okay? FNAF has already established time travel as possible in the very first Fazbear Frights book called Into the Pit. Remember that one? It's the title story as well, where Oswald ends up jumping into a ball pit and then somehow leaving 2011 and appearing in 1985 to witness the missing children's incident. Yeah, that story wasn't written for no reason, okay? And where do we see the first ball pit that wasn't in a pizzeria simply meant to lure animatronics around? Oh, would you look at that? The Mega Pizzaplex, motherfucker. I'm just saying, the time travel is already established as canon in the series, and considering how sketchy Gregory is, I wouldn't put him past him from being from the future or something, alright? There are two key indicators that in my mind point to this. The therapy disc, where the therapist calls Client 46 out on the lies of their home life, and the fact that when Gregory leaves the Pizzaplex in the worst ending, he sleeps in a cardboard box. The therapist in that tape says that 46, who it can still be Gregory, it might be the little girl who was in the poster for this DLC, but if it is Gregory, he has a great home life, okay? But like what they told their previous therapist was a lie. So if that was the case and his home life is great, why is he sleeping in a cardboard box, okay? Like, he says his parents suffered some form of tragedy and he's sleeping in a box, but apparently if he is 46 at least, that's not true. Yeah, maybe because it hasn't happened yet, okay? The tragedy where he most likely loses his parents hasn't happened as of when the game takes place, and that's why he can't actually go home to see them, because then there'll be two Gregorys, and they're like, what? How? In a date, Susie. The girl in the center of the FNAF Security Breach Ruins poster is most likely our player character for this game, but given the blonde hair and the cheek on the poster, could Susie be the FNAF Security Breach DLC main character? Now, your first instinct may be that this is impossible. That was my first instinct too. I mean, like, Susie's been dead since 1985 with the missing children's incident, and she ends up possessing Chica, who is then set free in Happiest Day. But in the original novel trilogy, starting with the Silver Eyes, the Funtime animatronics are described as being injected with Remnant made from the original 5 possessed animatronics, meaning that if Remnant does contain at least part of a soul, that the original 5, despite being set free in Happiest Day, no matter when Happiest Day takes place in the timeline, could still have the slightest bit of spirit form in the main world, since they would have been an Ennard, who at least at this point is Molten Freddy. I don't think that there is any explanation that could mean that this is Susie's original body. That seems like some supernatural shenanigan Lazarus pit kind of crap, and just seems fundamentally impossible. But could Susie have latched onto a new body? Maybe. In at 7th, Save Us. What if we're the ones who need help this time around? I mean, we have no idea who this person is and what they're doing, but maybe they're not one of the missing kids and they just also got trapped somehow as well. I mean, it's a question of how they would have gotten in, of course, and like, why are they exploring this place if it's destroyed and they're the size of a 4-year-old as well? But like, Still, no idea why she could be in the Pizzaplex, but my job isn't to theorize about why, but about what. This plot may end up being that we have to help Gregory save us so that he can show us the way out. Or the game is just going to be replayed as a new character with Gregory as our guardian telling us how to get around and get out of the Pizzaplex, which might satisfy those of you who wanted the Choose Your Guardian DLC. I said it wasn't going to happen. It just didn't make sense to do, since like it would just be the same game again, but slightly different. And I was right. And at 6, Bonnie's released. And while we may not be choosing our guardian, it's definitely possible that in this whole mess, Bonnie was released from whatever prison he was being held in. Or at least something like that could be possible. I mean, there are plenty of doors that we can only get behind if we had level 10 security clearance, which is impossible within the game. So those doors could have been opened or have just been destroyed in the collapse, which could explain how we get into these sections now that we probably aren't going around trying to collect security badges, if there are any even left remaining. But a security door level 10 would make much more sense since we have no idea what could be behind any of those doors. Maybe they kept Bonnie in some stasis chamber since he's a sentient AI that couldn't really be moved or something. I don't know, okay? It's FNAF. They'll come up with a scenario and a reason, and we won't really be able to fight it. That's just how it goes.
Number 5, Ghost. Another theory is that Burntrap looks the way he does because he is not actually physical, but simply appears to be physical, and that he is in essence some kind of ghost. This theory seems a lot more flimsy to me because I do think Burntrap exists fully on the physical plane, but it would at least allow us to explain why and how this form could still possibly exist. If Burntrap was a ghost, you would think he'd appear as, whatever form he most identifies with, and he could even maybe alter his appearance himself. Perhaps it is his sins that make him take the form of Burntrap, and it was simply his soul that was transferred from the digital world to the physical world, and when he takes control of other animatronics, it is not really through as much as code as like a spiritual possession, which he uses to hack their systems in a more supernatural way. This would also explain why Burntrap is the only antagonist in the game in Security Breach to not have his own jump scare. He isn't physically there, so he obviously can't jump scare you directly. Number 4, Vanny's repairs. When it comes to that one missing arm and where it came from, there are a lot of fans that have simply explained this by pointing to Vanny. Vanny in Security Breach appears to have been working for William Afton via glitch trap, and in so doing also managed to recover his original body and fix it up. The weirdest thing about that theory is if Vanny was taking parts from the Pizzaplex to fix up Burntrap, why wouldn't she do more for him? I mean, replacing his arm, that's pretty nice, but what about the rest of him? What about his jaw? What about everything? Burntrap is in a pretty dismal state when it comes to his appearance, and so you'd think she'd do more than just that if she was making repairs. So that's where this theory kind of falls apart for me, but I will say I think it's one of the most logical ones we have in regards to Burntrap's appearance in Security Breach.
Getting close to the end at number 3, grand larceny. Now, having all that knowledge is one thing, but stealing a load of trinkets, which he also does in this game, is fine, okay? Assuming that we gave Gregory a pass on that at least. He still commits grand larceny in addition, which is typically stealing anything which has a combined value of 400 or more, or something that would cost over $400 to replace in a reasonable amount of time. If we ignore the 87 collectible prize boxes found throughout the game, which would easily equal over $400, he still steals Freddy at the end of the game. In basically every ending, Freddy and Gregory leave without a care in the world, including the canon one. Okay, and before you say, Connor, I'm calling BS, Freddy chose to leave with Gregory. Freddy is an animatronic robot who cannot physically make that choice. He is property of Fazbear Entertainment. He is not a living being. He is an artificial intelligence. Just like ChatGPT, he has no rights. He is an object in the most literal sense of the word, which makes me think that maybe we need to start advocating for animatronic rights. But come on, okay? Freddy doesn't consent to Gregory climbing inside of him for the first first time. So yeah, if you want to say that he had that choice, then you know what? Gregory violated his consent too. So either way, it works out as just Gregory being a bad person. Gregory, in theory, could be getting charged with a whole lot more than just grand larceny or stealing Freddy too. And if you tell me that you don't think replacing Freddy in a reasonable amount of time would cost less than $400, you need to leave this video, okay? He would be the most expensive one to replace. He's the star. He is the face, the name of the company. It is Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizza Place, or Pizzaplex, whatever. But ultimately, at number 2, vandalism. Not only does Gregory damage multiple vents and vent covers throughout the game, but the main objective of the game is also a crime. That's right, you heard me. Us upgrading Freddy and using the parts of the other animatronics that we acquire through destructive means is vandalism, or it would be considered destruction of property instead if you wanted to head in that direction. But either way, destroying these animatronics, despite them trying to get to us, is a crime. Okay? Technically, we don't know what happens when we get caught by an animatronic. Same thing with Vanny, alright? Like, our screen cuts out before we see any real damage or harm come to us. So assuming that we get killed, while the likely scenario is merely an assumption. Plus, they're animatronics, so we can't really claim self-defense. Well, I mean, I guess it would depend on the jury and the judge as to whether you could claim self-defense or not, but like yeah, you feared for your life, but does that really call for hitting Roxy with a go-kart or crushing Chica in a trash compactor and like smashing Monty with a giant bucket? You could have just hid inside of Freddy's green room the whole time. You chose to go out and destroy these animatronics, so you put yourself in harm's way, which kind of negates the whole self-defense idea too, okay? They could also use the fact that Freddy was good as reasoning as to why the rest wouldn't have hurt you, so yeah. And finally, and at number 1, burn trap. So, during the true ending, otherwise known as the Afton ending, or the burn trap ending, or the whatever you want to call it ending, because it doesn't really matter, we have to fend off burn trap's attempts to take control over Freddy by setting him on fire with what I'm assuming are the mechanisms that Henry used in FNAF 6. However, it's pretty convenient that we fall into the room that we need to, with monitors set up to the areas that burn trap enters and only those rooms, with buttons that light fires in those rooms that correspond with the monitor. Like, I'm surprised that you hit the button on the left and the right one doesn't like set on fire, alright? Come on, it would have been far more convenient for Henry to light everything at the same time, but I mean, like, think about it, okay? How are these working? It's clearly been a while. It's like Gregory knew that he would be fine. It's like he knew that going down the one-way elevator trip would all work out in his favor. And his first reaction, his first instinct to seeing this thing crawl out of a recharge pod is trying to destroy it instead of questioning what the it even is, okay? Like, I think he briefly mentions it, but then he instantly forgets about it, and then it's like, fire! Like, the dude is an arsonist, straight up. And at 10, killed Vanny. Vanny isn't actually a killer, at least there's no evidence that Vanny wanted to kill Gregory. Vanny never threatens us, she's never holding a knife or another weapon, and for all intents and purposes, she's definitely creepy and wants to kidnap us at least, but she isn't trying to kill us, at least in the eyes of the law. And everyone is saying that Gregory having her killed is fine because his life was in danger, but in the eyes of the justice system, his life wasn't exactly in jeopardy in that sense. Self-defense also only counts if you use the proper amount of force, meaning not an excessive amount, because, you know, making someone suffer and then die isn't self-defense, that's just torture, and giving the robots the command to tear Vanny apart like they tore Freddy up, because it's the same command, so the same thing would happen, is definitely classified as excessive, alright? Just imagine what happened to Freddy on a human. That's what happened to Vanny. So yeah, Gregory is definitely a cold-hearted killer in this scenario. And at 9, secret robot. The possibility that Gregory is a robot is still a thing at the time of recording. So let's talk about the random bits that make Gregory seem more like an animatronic than a human. There's the fact that he's literally smaller than a 4-year-old, however is able to speak full sentences and do literally everything he does in this game, which seems like he's a rogue robot that's been active for a long time. He also gets all CRT, glitchy red whenever Vanny's around, which is a similar effect to where you would put a magnet to an older TV. There's Freddy's shock as to how he sees Gregory after getting Roxy's eyes, and there's also the fact that literally nothing else makes sense about him unless he is a robot. It explains why he'd be homeless, it explains why he's so willing to kill, because he would have no moral code. It would explain why Vanny would be willing to bring him to Afton if he's supposed to be Crying Child as a robot, and explains why Afton takes over Freddy and not Gregory if he is meant to be Crying Child. Basically, it makes this whole game make sense. So, is he a robot? Currently unknown, but it's certainly possible, and I feel like it's probably a thing. And it ain't Help Me. Very reminiscent of the Save Them minigame from earlier FNAF games. I'm pretty sure it's FNAF 2. In the poster for FNAF Ruin, you can see Gregory's face on the bottom left monitor with the phrase "Help Me" underscore written in green lettering. This seems to me, at least, to indicate that we may have a potential plot brewing where we need to save Gregory and maybe Freddy as well from the collapse of the Pizzaplex, since we know that Gregory and Freddy are sitting on the hill in the final shot alone in the true ending, which means that if we do end up having to save him, our player character will most likely perish in the process. But this also means that we will not be playing as Gregory in this game, but that's just more of an indication as to why he could be the villain. The underscore in that text could also be another indication of Gregory being a robot, but it could also just be potentially a reference to a file within the DLC that could have some more secret information, but I have no idea if that is true. It's just speculation since we don't have any of the files for the DLC, because, you know, underscores are primarily used for putting spaces in file names without actually using spaces. Or it could be that we're, like I said, we're just trying to help him. But it could also be a ruse that's meant to lure us to a place where we will ultimately perish. And 7 caused this. And honestly, okay, I mean, Gregory is the reason the DLC is called Ruin anyway, right? If he'd have just minded his own damn business and didn't go down into the basement of an about to open to staff Pizzaplex, he'd have been fine. But no, he decided in his infinite child wisdom that he's gonna do the stupid thing and take a one-way elevator ride, which caused the collapse of the Pizzaplex. And sure, you can argue that him leaving the Pizzaplex is the worst ending, but he doesn't know that in the context of the game, okay? Gregory, in the story of the canon ending, could have left, but decides to make stupid choices and gets into the sinkhole below the place, and then sets everything down there on fire and brings the building down on top of him. But somehow he survives despite needing help according to the poster, and then he makes it to a hill without the protagonist of the DLC. Seems sus to me. Alright, Gregory definitely vented to get out of there. Just saying. And it's 6, no snitches. Okay, I don't know how Gregory survived Security Breach if he is not secretly evil. There were plenty of times that this kid could have gotten got, but no. Particularly when Freddy gets grabbed by the Moondrop animatronic right outside of Parts and Service. Alright, are you telling me that the daycare attendant, Moondrop, whatever you want to call him, told Vanessa that Freddy was in the Parts and Service room like, hey, I got ya boy downstairs, but didn't mention that we were in the recharge station right next to it? I mean, like, he knew we were there. He waved at us while he was dragging Freddy's corpse. Like, then she's talking to Freddy as if she doesn't know we're listening in, and as if she thinks that we're working with him, but isn't quite sure. Like, come on, okay? Like, yeah, the daycare attendant can't get us if we're in the recharge station, but we're clearly visible, okay? We aren't invisible, he can see us, so why wouldn't he also inform Vanessa that we are working with Freddy and just confirm it? Okay? If he did, like, she would have brought that up instead of asking him if he was helping us. It doesn't make sense. The daycare not ratting on us is extremely suspicious in my opinion, and just seems like they needed to get him downstairs to burn trap or something, alright? I don't know, it's creepy. Halfway through into number 5, Justice for Bonnie. Bonnie was missing from Security Breach, having been most likely destroyed by Monty, but perhaps getting to investigate Bonnie's disappearance and being able to change how things go with, I don't know, just like the story of Fazbear Entertainment going forward would be an interesting mission. If we were meant to actually like truly investigate it, that is, I guess, like turn maybe at least part of the DLC into a bit of a detective game, I think that would be like a really fun, compelling, and like good side story. I don't know. And from what I've seen, we all want justice for Bonnie, especially since we want Papa Freddy to be reunited with Bonnie since he seemingly really misses him, considering the dialogue from the first recharge station when Gregory asks him about Vanny, and Freddy says there is no bunny in the Pizzaplex. Not anymore, in a very somber way, but I still don't trust Freddy, so I don't really care. I just want to be a detective like Batman. Plus, I mean, we also don't have any good animatronics this time around to help protect us, since Freddy is trapped, so maybe this will be the way for us to get another guardian, since Freddy's with Gregory. And then there you go, you also get choose your guardian. You're welcome. You can have that one for free. Steel Wool, just please respond to me on Twitter. For level 10. Now, the highest security level access that you can get in the main game is level 8. This just requires you to do every of the security room mini games. However, with level 8 being the highest that you can actually achieve, it begs the question as to why there are doors with level 10 security. Because if it's impossible to achieve that level, what's the point of giving them a security level at all? I mean, there are doors that are actively locked and don't open at all, that aren't blocked. So why not just make the doors that you would have made level 10 just impenetrable? It doesn't seem efficient to me, okay? They could have been saving these areas for this DLC, and they could add maybe 2 more security pass rooms, since if you end up no clipping past the doors with level 10, there is nothing behind them at all. So I mean, I don't know, it would be nice to get some additional areas in the DLC. These level 10 areas would give us that little extra sense of new content while also expanding the Pizzaplex in a relatively reasonable way, and especially considering how we've now had the place collapse, those level 10 doors still being shut would be a bummer. Getting close to the end of number 3, Client 46. Could this new blonde girl actually be Client 46? The mysterious therapy client who never speaks, but we all thought was Gregory, or at least some of us, most of us thought was Gregory. I mean, honestly, it could make a lot of sense. It would explain why 46 would be talking to Vanny despite Gregory being afraid of Vanessa. It would explain how they could hack the animatronics but not be able to stop them by hacking them again like Gregory could have. It would explain how their home life was great despite their accounts of the past, since after all, Gregory does end up sleeping in a cardboard box. And it makes a lot more sense than he's a time traveler and the tragedy just hasn't happened yet. It would also explain why we never hear 46 talk, because it's a girl, and it would just make us think that it's Vanny or Vanessa instead of it being someone we hadn't seen before. Client 46 was a kid, as evidenced by multiple recordings, and they would be immune to the deaths of her therapist if she was talking to Vanny, but who could this mysterious girl be? But ultimately, in at number 2, Ghost. While yes, this girl could be 46, it's also possible that she is Elizabeth Afton, either as a ghost, which if she is 46 wouldn't really make sense, or she could be possessed by Elizabeth Afton's spirit. If we take a look at the blob, which does include Circus Baby, her eyes aren't lit anymore, meaning that the spirit is no longer in there. And considering how Afton's body still somehow survived, and we think that Michael managed to make his way into Glamrock Freddy, it would make sense that Elizabeth's spirit would survive as well, especially if she wanted to stick around to keep trying to impress dear old dad. Since in a previous video we came to the conclusion that Remnant can only be burned away if the spirit wants to be set free, or rather the burning doesn't really do anything and they're only released if they get their unfinished business completed, like the original Missing Children in the Happiest Day minigame getting that party. Elizabeth could be sent to gain Gregory's trust and then defeat him like she did in Sister Location, or maybe she's there to find her brother. And finally, in at number 1, Great Escape. The final potential plot would be a great escape story, where this blonde girl has come to the rescue of Gregory or has been released because she was trapped, and now she has to make a break for it while the building collapses around her. Will she save Gregory or will she only save herself? Multiple endings are not out of the question and kind of expected at this point, with one of them, the most difficult seemingly being the true ending, but who knows? Maybe none of these are right and we're all reading into this idea way too much, and our expectations are just going to ruin this DLC for us. That's right. I made the joke. You thought I was done making cringy jokes and puns. Hell to the no. I will always try and make terrible messages and jokes because that's just what I do. No matter where I am, terrible, unrelated, possibly offensive jokes are always being made.
Number 10, will return. This theory is based on some pretty strong facts if you ask me. After all, Burntrap is William Afton, who at this point has come back multiple times from the brink of death and beyond. While Burntrap was defeated at the end of the Afton ending, having been seemingly attacked and defeated by the Blob, this does not mean that he is in fact dead. We know William Afton well enough at this point to theorize that he likely won't stay dead and may even return. I mean, he's done it before, and this time around we almost believed that he wouldn't, and we fell for that and we were wrong. That Vanny would actually just carry on his name and he'd be completely gone. But considering that Vanny seems to have been a one and done villain kinda, unless she too is somehow a villain who can be like redeemed or killed and then return from that, I am seriously doubtful we'll ever get anyone to replace William long term. So I kind of expect to see him in the DLC. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming and you love it when we talk FNAF, check out our FNAF playlist. We have lots of FNAF content for you. Number 9, Return to Classic. Isn't it interesting that they didn't decide to give Burntrap a completely new look? I feel like this may have actually been done intentionally, not just because William was content to occupy his old, completely scrappy and burnt up body, but because the game creators wanted to hint at a return to the classic era of Five Nights at Freddy's. I think that this could be a sign that not only will we see more Burntrap, or perhaps a less tarnished version of William Afton, but we will also see some of the classic animatronics reappear, perhaps with the next game to follow, Security Breach, being set earlier in the timeline. I feel like there are still so many places throughout the timeline that we have yet to explore or see or visit, so I personally would be here for a game that takes us back to an earlier event or perhaps even location. Number 8, not Scrap Trap. This theory comes from the fact that Burntrap actually has his arm replaced in the game. Interesting. Now, last we saw William Afton would be Pizzeria Simulator, where he was believed to have been Scrap Trap, or at least the last time we saw him physically in person. Scrap Trap seemed like an even more worn version of Springtrap and can basically be found in the game out in the alley. It's one of the animatronics you can salvage in this game. However, Scrap Trap was pretty much completely missing an arm, whereas Burntrap, of course, has both arms. And if Scrap Trap is supposed to have been Burntrap, I mean, how is Burntrap even alive, or unalive, or whatever he is? I mean, Scrap Trap got burned up pretty bad, and all the animatronics were implied to have died there. So how would this body still be functional at all? And I know what you're thinking, you know, Glitch Trap was technically the last time we saw William Afton in the games with Help Wanted, but even that doesn't make Burntrap's existence make any more sense, because it doesn't explain the state of Burntrap's body or why we're continuing to see it used. If this was the original Springtrap, Scrap Trap form, obviously, which, I mean, it might not be because there might have been some weird stuff there. Speaking of weird stuff, Number 7, the meta. Going off of that theory, another theory that some have is that Scrap Trap was never even really real. Yeah, this is kind of more of a Scrap Trap theory, I guess, but as it was sort of in part created because of the existence of Burntrap, I feel like we can include it on our list. Some believe that Pizzeria Simulator isn't even part of the canon in the same way as the other games, and that it is more like Help Wanted, kind of a sort of metagame that is supposed to exist within the universe of FNAF itself. Number 6, needs organic body. Assuming that Burntrap's body is the same one as possibly Scrap Trap and definitely Springtrap, and before that originally the Spring Bonnie suit, or perhaps I guess I should say originally in part William Afton, it could stand to reason that the why behind Afton returning to this old and tarnished form is because he actually needs his physical, organic, human body for something. Perhaps he needs to remain connected to it to even be able to move into the physical plane from the digital world, or perhaps he is intending to resurrect his human form. But an explanation given in regards to why he physically appears the way he does in Security Breach could simply be that this is the form he needs to take for one reason or another. Now, the reasoning, of course, behind the need is a little more unclear for me, but I'd believe it if it was revealed that William had some kind of plans for his human corpse. It just sounds like a William thing.
Halfway through into number 5, Vanessa relationship. His relationship with Vanessa also seemingly makes no sense. Okay, we're willing to kill her in one ending, she does something to us in another ending, but if we free her from William's control, she ends up taking us out for ice cream, and then we sit on a hill with Glamrock Freddy's head. No big deal. Like, what the hell? This lady just spent 6 hours trying to kill you in your mind, bro. Okay, so like, you think that that would make it a little more difficult to just chill with her, okay? Even if she did offer you ice cream, which, you know what, is even worse. Would you get into her unmarked van if she offered you ice cream too? I doubt it. So why would you think that this is a good idea? I don't know. It seems like they're related or that they know each other somehow, but no connection prior to this is ever established. So what the frickin' hell? Like, Gregory isn't mentioned in Vanessa's therapy sessions and vice versa if he is Client 46. Like, Vanessa isn't mentioned to Gregory, if those are about Gregory, but like, even if they are, who made him associated with the company? Okay, it could have been Vanessa, but wouldn't we have mentioned it or mentioned her odd behavior? I don't know, okay? This dude has so much going wrong with him that it is triggering all of the red flag sensors within me. And those have gotten good. I have dated some crazies. And for Gregory oddities. Now, building off of that, Gregory's height compared to his age has always been something that's bothered me. So to really calculate how tall Gregory is, I did the good old pixel measurement system off the Funko statue of Gregory and Freddy. Now, assuming that Glamrock Freddy's height is the same as Rockstar Freddy, which ends up being around 6.1 feet, that means that Freddy's 570 pixels in this instance, for the picture I was using, ends up being 6.1 feet, okay? That opening that Gregory is hiding in, when being generous at least, at my counting was 118 pixels tall. 118 pixels, which, keep in mind, was being generous, ends up equaling out to 14.21 inches or 1.18 feet. Going on various forums about children's car seats of all things, the government is definitely watching me now, I see that the torso length of kids, while greatly varying, does end up being larger than 14.21 inches on average. Even a 4-year-old ends up having a torso of 15 inches. And the knowledge that this kid has exceeds even some of my own. The kid is the size of a 4-year-old maybe, but can fit inside baby strollers and various other small areas around the Pizzaplex. He's too small to drive one of the go-karts alone, but knows how to restart generators, operate a trash compactor, start and drive a car, and has the ability to identify a car battery, connect jumper cables to that battery properly, and then use those to fix Freddy's whole recharge every hour issue in one of the endings. How the living hell does that make any sense? It doesn't. Bro.
Number 3, Possession. I believe that Burntrap could return in the DLC Rune in control of the Blob animatronic that we see at the end of Security Breach. While the Blob initially seemed to be intent on attacking Burntrap and either incidentally or intentionally saving Glamrock Freddy and Gregory, this doesn't mean that the Blob won that fight. We don't know what happened next, and it is possible that in the end, Burntrap actually won this fight, managing to take control of the Blob as it was attempting to do with the other animatronics. Now, just because the Blob is a mangled kind of mess doesn't mean that it might not be susceptible to, being hacked and overtaken by Afton's spirit or programming, so it's possible. Number 2, Amalgamated. On the other hand, it is possible that Burntrap will appear in the DLC as kind of a new part of the Blob, a new addition, if you will. It would be interesting to see how this might change or affect the Blob's personality. The Blob could then become more antagonistic in the DLC as a result, or perhaps William could be, redeemed in some way by becoming a part of it. Maybe he'd finally get a sense for his victim's suffering and he'd actually feel something about that. If his victims are the Blob, like I think they might be. Though, how that makes sense after Pizzeria Simulator, I don't really know. Or perhaps the Blob would just devour Burntrap's soul if amalgamated, and William Afton would effectively be erased from existence. Finally, actually defeated. I doubt it, but we can't completely rule it out. And I can still dream. Number 1, not appearing. A scary thought for sure, in the sense that I feel like a game without some kind of Afton presence feels weird. Even when Afton hasn't been directly appearing in a game, his presence is usually felt there in some way, usually as a result of his actions, which have created other antagonists for us to face. The idea of Burntrap not appearing at all, it's a pretty scary thought for that reason. However, this could also just be a DLC where Burntrap himself does not appear, but where, of course, Afton's presence is still somehow felt. I'd be more interested in that actually than him just straight up making another antagonistic appearance again. What else is there for us to explore and find in these runes? Could some of Burntrap's other victims or experiments be lying in wait for us to face?
Recently, there have been several ideas of various Security Breach DLC. Some of them good, some of them not so good. However, while yes, something like the Choose Your Guardian DLC would be cool, that's not the only option. So today, we discuss whether or not we're likely to see the appearance of Glamrock Bonnie in the FNAF Security Breach DLC. Whatever the DLC ends up being. So, let's do it. Firstly, based off of what we're expressly told in-game, it could actually be possible. All we really know is that Bonnie ended up going into Monty Golf around 4 AM, and then that was the last place he was seen. Quote from the duffel bag, security report, 12:24 AM. Bonnie is seen leaving his green room in Rockstar Row heading east towards the atrium. 2:40 AM, Bonnie enters the East Arcade. 4:12 AM, Bonnie enters Monty Golf. That's the last of a repaired Bonnie that we ended up seeing. Since, in another bag we learned, quote, with Bonnie out of commission, we are making Monty the new bass player. Parts and service has already done the proper adjustments. This could be a good thing. Monty could be even more popular than Bonnie. Which, in combination to the fact that Bonnie was last seen in Monty Golf, suggests that Monty is the culprit behind Bonnie's destruction. Which is odd, in my opinion, because like we know Monty loves smashing things, so like that's not the weird part about this. My thought is, where was Monty chilling before he moved into Rockstar Row? Like, we don't see any real living quarters in Monty Golf, and the only other animatronics that we see outside of the core 4 is the daycare attendant who has his own room above the ball pit. So, where could Monty have been staying if not in Rockstar Row? Anyway, if Monty is to blame for the destruction of Bonnie, we could see Bonnie come back in the DLC. But unfortunately, it wouldn't be really to get revenge on Monty, since we see that Monty does indeed face justice. At least, justice if he was guilty for the crimes. And if not, then it was just destruction. There is another theory, however, that could counter this point if it's true. The idea that Glamrock Bonnie's endo was used to create the new body that Afton inhabits in the true ending, Burn Trap. Now, we've covered this in another video, link to that is in the iCard, but in that video we came to the conclusion that the entire endo wasn't used, since the shoulders on Burn Trap aren't wide enough compared to the male Glamrock endos. And the fact that Afton's muscle fibers, or nerves, again, still not quite sure what they are still connected, would prove that it's the old suit. But there are sections where the fibers are blocked, like on the left foot and left arm. Both things that he was missing, or were more damaged at the time, while in his scrap trap form. Seemingly suggesting that perhaps these specific parts came from Glamrock Bonnie instead of the whole endoskeleton. Maybe they were the only parts that they could use after Monty had his fun. Maybe they cut Monty off from destroying the rest of him, hence why he starts smashing his green room. We're not sure, and frankly the latter is just speculation, but it's still interesting. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me. But I think I might have found a way to make it work. Like I said, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. But if this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, again, it would need to have broader shoulders, and actually it would need to be shorter. Unless they're like using the female endo for Bonnie, which wouldn't really make sense, so I don't think that they would, especially if they're gonna give Bonnie shoulder pads. But I mean, like, even if we scale them so they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same way, and I'm comparing to like an actual endo, not the Glamrock Bonnie fan art, they still don't line up. And I mean, there are similarities between the two, of course, but there aren't enough where I can even call this above 50%. There are also issues of, again, the muscles being woven throughout the body. If it was just the head, I would understand, since they could have just put the old head on a new endo body, but with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's too intricate to have been placed there. Even if they were, they would be dangling. They would just be hanging out, unless they had been stuck there like with super glue. Because like they were deep in there, because you know, he was shoved full of machine parts. So yeah, if Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of the body bits. So yeah, I'm gonna go with they added the arm and the leg on after the fact. But what would that mean for Glamrock Bonnie? Well, it would mean that if decommissioning Bonnie was a part of Vanny's plan to resurrect Afton, there would really be no Bonnie available that you could bring back, since he would really just be decommissioned. And while the other animatronics do come back, losing a leg and an arm is worse than your legs, your eyes, or just being smashed, since he wouldn't really be able to hop around on one leg despite being a bunny, and since he only had one arm, he wouldn't really be able to crawl like Monty does. So, I mean, I suppose the DLC could instead just be replacing Monty with Glamrock Bonnie, but that's achievable with mods, so there isn't really a point to making that a paid DLC, since we would all just opt into modding the game for that experience. Plus, certainly the model they use for Bonnie wouldn't end up being the one added to the mod instead of the current one. So at this point, we'd need a solid DLC to actually make it worth it. With that being said, however, Bonnie being decommissioned might actually impact his presence in the game, but not to the story, since the DLC could be, like I've suggested before in other videos, a series of missions that involve us investigating his disappearance, possibly as a favor to Freddy, since he really seemed to miss Bonnie. Like, he was pretty sad when he was saying that there's no bunny in this pizzaplex, not anymore. That was my Freddy impression. Maybe it would even be because Freddy was already investigating it or something like that, saying that he knows Monty's been giving him side-eye and wanted to know if that Monty would be coming after Freddy next, since after all, Monty is stronger than Freddy, at least until we break Monty's brains in with a giant bucket filled with balls, which is a total hazard, by the way. I mean, like, come on. The giant bucket that we use to crush Monty is such a issue for health and safety for both employees and for customers. Because, like, if a 6-year-old kid with a 4-year-old's body can use it to destroy an animatronic, how safe is it going to be for literally anyone else? Like, what's the point of the bucket anyway? Like, is it supposed to contain water? Because, like, when it falls on Monty, it breaks the catwalk that we're on. And honestly, water, especially in that quantity, is going to be a lot heavier than some ball pit balls filled with air. Seriously, who the living hell thought that this was going to be a good idea? Or like, how have they not gotten fined for it yet? Or like, how have they not fixed it if they have gotten fined? Yeah, there are guardrails on the catwalk, but that doesn't matter if there's a giant bucket that can destroy the catwalk that you're standing on and then cause you to fall to your death. Especially when falling that distance just like severed Monty's legs from his torso. Anyway, sorry, rant aside, maybe once Freddy has Monty's hands, we're able to investigate the rest of what happened to Bonnie. Maybe we get into Monty's green room and then kind of like suss out what went wrong. And no, that was not an Among Us joke, despite me constantly making Among Us jokes about this game because Gregory is sus, he vented. But like, maybe in the end, we would find Bonnie's casing with a missing arm and a missing leg, and then we would know for certain that I'm right. Now, do I think that this is going to happen? Really? I'm not sure. Like, a lot of people seemingly want to see Bonnie in this game, so much so that they are replacing Monty using mods, but also the idea for the Choose Your Guardian DLC is also very popular, and perhaps even more popular than the others. However, since we know DLCs to be canon add-ons, I'm guessing that a Bonnie investigation would be more likely than switching up the robot who protects us, since honestly, the whole Bonnie thing has less lore implications in the long run. Having someone other than Freddy protect us just seems like it would be too messy, especially with the fact that we would have to steal the other bits from the animatronics, and if we pick Roxy, then we have her eyes the entire game, which is kind of cheating. But like, you know, you get it? You do understand what I mean here? Like, I like the idea, but it's probably just gonna have to be a mod instead of actual canon DLC, okay? I hate to say it, even though I say it every time I talk about this mod.